Hello and welcome to Faithfully Stampin' with Jennifer Helm. I am Jennifer Helm, the Faithful Stamper, an independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up! Today I have for you a quick sketch card, and the idea behind a quick sketch card is to be something quick, easy to duplicate, and something that doesn't involve a lot of time or serious techniques. So this is the card I have for you. You can see it's made up of some different size panels, and this is a great card that can be used for any occasion because you can change the look of the card completely by changing up the colors of the cardstock and the stamp set that you use. So let's go ahead and I'll show you how to make this. The first thing you need is a card base that is 8.5 by 5.5, and I've scored it down the middle at 4.25 on the long side to create my card base. This is Smoky Slate that I am using. And the next thing I'm going to do is take a panel of basic black. This is 5.25 by 4, what I call your standard insert size, and we're going to layer this on the front. For this project today, you do not need heavy-duty glue or adhesive. Any adhesive you like will be perfectly sufficient. And so you're just going to layer this insert on the front with a little bit of a border around it. So next up, we're going to work on these 4 pieces that make up the panels on the front. And you can see I've kind of kept this card a little bit neutral, so I'm sticking with the colors. So here's where you might want to grab either screenshots of the measurements or write them down if you've got a notebook handy. So the first panel is 1.5 inches wide by 1.75 inches tall, and this one is going to go up here on the top left corner. Next up, this is basic gray, by the way. The next panel is 2.25 inches wide by 1.75 inches tall. This I went back to the Smoky Slate on, and that'll go in the top right corner. Now we're going to flip-flop colors for the bottom. So the bottom left is going to be a piece of cardstock in Smoky Slate that is 1.5 inches wide by 3.25 inches tall. And then last but not least, one more panel of basic gray that is 2.25 inches wide by 3.25 inches tall. So the top and the bottom pieces are the same height for each layer, and then the same width. So just that kind of helps me keep it in my head a little bit more. And you could use different colors of cardstock, different pieces of designer series paper. You could even emboss cardstock if you wanted to. So there's lots of possibilities you have. You want to leave a little bit of a border around the edge. I always have to double check myself and make sure I'm gluing that top one in the right direction. And I don't know about you, but I find it easier sometimes to turn my card so I can better see what I'm doing to line things up correctly. And so as I said, whatever kind of adhesive you prefer, and you're just leaving that little bit of a border around. If it's not perfectly centered here, don't worry, you're going to cover that up with the focal point stamp image that you're going to create. All right, and speaking of that focal point image, we are going to go ahead and take a look at that now. So to create the focal point, we're going to use 2 pieces of cardstock. First up, we have a 2.5 inch square of basic black, and then a 2.25 inch square in basic white. And these two we're going to layer together after we stamp the image on the front. So if you're either looking for an image that is going to fit on a 2.25 inch square, or if you have something larger, you can simply make your square bigger. Obviously it has to still fit on the front of the card, but you could expand it up a little bit in size if you need to. So I am going to bring over my Stampin' Pierce mat because the stamp set that I want to use is photopolymer. So that's the clear, not red rubber, but the clear stamp that does not have a cushion built right in. And so you're going to need something to just give you a little cushion, give you a better impression when you're stamping. And don't mind this, this is just my little scrap. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that, because I know if I do that, it's going to mess up my stamp. So I just need a little piece of scrap paper is what I'm getting at. So I'm using black Memento ink, Tuxedo Black Memento ink, and trying to stick my fingers in it already. So I'm going to stamp this here. It stamps just a little off the page, which is why I am using that piece of scrap paper. I sacrificed that one snowflake to fit the rest of the stamp on my little square here. So now I can put that aside. And while I'm here, I'm going to do a little bit more stamping. First of all, I'm going to stamp my inside sentiment. And if you're not an experienced stamper, if you're new to stamping, one thing to remember is no CPR on your stamps. This was probably one of the first things I had to learn, because you tend to want to be heavy-handed to make sure you have enough ink on a stamp, but you actually don't want to do that. Whether you're using photopolymer or the red rubber cling stamps, you want to tap gently. Tap, tap, tap. Now with photopolymer, you can see through the block to the stamp. So if you can see an area where you don't quite have enough ink, just take it back to the ink pad, stamp, tap, 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 and then 1, 2, 3, and lift up. That way you're not sinking the stamp down into the ink pad, because I guarantee you if you do that, you are going to end up with extra ink on your paper where you don't want it. You're going to end up with ink on your stamp you're going to have to clean up, and you're guaranteed to get ink on your fingers too. So just remember, tap, 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 and no CPR on your stamps, and you'll be good to go. So now I'm going to switch to Smoky Slate Ink and just add a little snowflake accent to the top and the bottom. I am all about the accents. I like my insides and my envelopes to have a little bit of pizzazz. So here is my envelope, and I'm going to add my little snowflake there as well. I don't like naked envelopes. One last little bit of stamping. We are going to create a sentiment for the front of the card, and I'm using a piece of basic white, which is 3/4 of an inch tall by 3/4 of an inch long. If you have a sentiment that's smaller, you could definitely make this smaller and then layer it on a larger piece of cardstock. I'll show you that in just a minute. But this was the perfect size for my Merry Christmas stamp. And let's see, that's all my stamping, so I'm going to put my ink pads away before I create a disaster, as I've been known to do. I mentioned layering the sentiment piece. So this one was 3/4 of an inch by 3 1/4. We are going to take a piece of basic black, just keeping with my theme for the card, that is 1 inch tall by 3 1/2 inches wide, and I'm simply going to layer these together. But before I do that, I'm going to add a little bit of color to my little snowman here. He's cute in black and white, but I thought the card needed a little bit of something. So first up, I'm going to take my light pumpkin pie Stampin' Blend and color his nose, because every snowman needs his carrot nose. And these blends work perfectly with the Memento ink. Next up, I'm going to take my light Pool Party, and I'm just going to color along the bottom, right where the shading is that Stampin' Up! Has already provided for me, just to give it a little dimension. And of course, he needs a cute little hat and scarf. So I am using Old Olive, the light Old Olive blend, and the light Cherry Cobbler. So this, I'm not doing a lot of dimension with my shading. I'm simply using these as markers for this particular snowman. So I'm just going to fill in my little stripes here. These markers have a fine tip and a brush tip, which comes in very handy for fine detail or when you have larger spaces. And then I'm going to go back and fill in my stripes with the light cherry cobbler. And that way my little snowman looks all festive. Obviously you could make it a snow girl by just changing up the colors. Oop, almost missed that bottom piece. There we go. All right. So, just a couple things to finish up the card. First up, I'm going to glue my sentiment piece on the inside. Then I'm going to layer these two pieces together. One more bit of layering with my sentiment here. All right, now these need to go on the front of the card, and to do that I'm going to use some dimensionals. I have mini dimensionals handy today. Whoop! Throwing things across the table. So I like adequate coverage so that my panels don't sag in the middle. So when I have these all on here, just need to peel off the backing. Now it is up to you where you position your focal image. You can tend a little more towards the top if you like that look, or you can actually center it on the front of the card. I'm going to center it but lift it up a little bit because I want to leave room for my sentiment strip here. And this is going to get centered at the bottom, like so. And now this looks perfectly cute the way it is, but I wanted to show you one last thing. Every snowman needs a little sparkle, right? So I have my Wink of Stella, and this just gives a little clear sparkle to whatever you trace over. So I am simply coloring over the tops of the scarf and the hat. I could do the whole thing if I wanted. And I'm not sure if you can see, but I've got just a subtle little shimmer, a little wink of shimmer. So that's our Wink of Stella pen. That's great for all sorts of projects. All right, so there we have our quick and simple sketch card. And I mentioned it was great for any occasion. As I said, it's perfectly easy to change up the look of the card based on the colors you use and the stamp set. I'm going to show you an example where I use the same color scheme that I used for this neutral Christmas card. However, I changed the stamp set. And so for this one, this is a brand new stamp set that's coming out in January of 2022. My dad is a big fan of nature and wildlife, so I knew I had to get the stamp set as soon as I saw it. And so it's got this beautiful wolf, and I cannot get over how beautiful this image stamps on paper. There's a bear in the set as well. And instead of adding a sentiment down here at the bottom, I simply stamped right on top of the cardstock. Since it wasn't too dark of a color, I could do that. So that's another option for you. And then here's the inside, and there's a little owl to go with our wolf on the front. So if you are a nature lover, this is going to be a must-have. And you can also, instead of using cardstock, you can use designer series paper and coordinate it. You could even do 4 different pieces if you wanted. I stuck with the 2-in-2 method here, but this is a sneak peek at some of our Daffodil Daydream stamp set and the matching Daffodil designer series paper that is also available in early 2022. So obviously this one's a little bit more bright and cheery. You could even take cardstock and emboss it and mix embossed cardstock with designer series paper. The options are endless. So thank you very much for tuning in to this quick and simple card sketch video. If you haven't already, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel and click that notification bell so that you don't miss any of the videos I post. I typically post 2 videos a week. You can also follow me over on Facebook as The Faithful Stamper. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and happy crafting.